We promised you conversations about some difficult subjects, and today we're going to talk about that on Living Your Life podcast. We're going to talk about reproduction health. The African American community is affected by multiple sexual and reproductive health conditions compared with other races and ethnicities. And if you add sickle cell disease, disparities increase astronomically. So, what do we do about that? Here to help us navigate the terrain is Teonna Woolford, the founder of the first and only sickle cell organization in the whole world who has a mission around sexual reproduction and maternal health. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Miss Teonna Woolford. Teonna, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
It is good to see you again. Dr. Hebert, what's going on, man?
Oh, it's all good, my friend. It's life brings us challenges, and that's what we're gonna talk about today.
Yeah,
We're gonna talk
yeah,
about
yeah.
today.
Yeah, so let's just get to it. Talk to us, Teonna, about what is SCRED?
Okay, SCRED stands for the Sickle Cell Reproductive Health Education Directive. So, our mission is to advocate for high quality reproductive, sexual, and maternal health for all individuals impacted by sickle cell disease.
So why did you launch SCRED?
Yeah, so the start of it was largely inspired by my personal experience. Like 11 years ago, I had a bone marrow transplant that rendered me infertile, which was actually my biggest fear more than anything. And it was really disturbing to me that the sickle cell community doesn't have access to fertility preservation services the way that cancer does. There's like a million organizations that will give away grants for egg freezing, sperm banking if you have cancer, but nobody does that for sickle cell. And with these like gene therapy, stem cell transplants on the rise, that's something that we really need access to, and even disease progression alone. But we do more than fertility. There's things that we go through like delayed puberty. Pregnant women with sickle cell, they can't be on their disease modifying therapy. There's no disease modifying therapy that they can be on. So access to care for pregnant women, priapism for the guys. So we really tackle reproductive health across the lifespan.
Well, Tiana, let me ask you a quick question here. This is really a serious situation here because when we start talking about reproductive health, we already know African American women. We just saw this just the other day about this Olympic athlete that died because of her child birth or lack of a better term here, her being pregnant and having preeclampsia. But the issue is you already as an African American woman having these risks more than being in a country that's fairly underdeveloped. So when you add sickle cell in, like Kier said earlier, I mean, what are the rates? What are the odds of this to be able to even bring a child, bring a pregnancy to term and then deliver the baby?
Well, unfortunately, we just published data not that long ago and we know that Black maternal health, like you said, is a huge crisis. It's a public health crisis. But for women with sickle cell, the maternal mortality rate is actually 26 times higher than the national.
What?
Wow.
What?
Wow. Yeah, that's what I thought. I knew it was very high, but I did not know it was that high.
And a lot of it has to do with the fact that we don't have good access to comprehensive care. It's something that you need to be in the same room with your hematologist, your high risk OB. All of the people need to be in the same room together. And we just haven't established any type of protocols. Like I said, the FDA hasn't approved any disease modifying therapies. None of them are tested to be safe for pregnant and breastfeeding women. So, I mean, that's just one of the issues. That's just one of the gaps.
I mean, and then you look at for males. I mean, one of the biggest medicines that people are using right now for sickle cell disease for males and females, but males have this big issue with hydroxyurea.
Lower sperm count.
Yeah, with lower sperm count. We don't have the long-term data on hydroxyurea. So, even though, a lot of people are using that, that's a huge issue. That reason why a lot of people don't want to use it. And I really understand that. That's why there's so many other therapies out there besides hydroxyurea that people need to be looking at.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, hydroxyurea, look, it's been around for so long. It's our best research drug. It does have toxicity in it. When it works, it works. But like you said, there are consequences. So I'm excited about the shift in sickle cell, that we now have these huge pipelines, and hopefully we'll have access to these 70 therapies that they're working on right now.
Mhm.
Teonna, let me ask you this. How many children do you have?
I don't have any children. So I am infertile. So I'm gonna have to probably adopt, but right now I don't have any children.
Do you ever have the desire to have children?
Yeah, that's I went into my bone marrow transplant consult and said, like, look, I know this is a risk, this is a risk, this is a risk. I'll risk it all, but I don't want to be infertile. And that concern was very dismissed. I was told that I should get this transplant and be happy to survive.
Yeah.
So that's what they told you. That's all you had. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's really dismissive. And the thing that really kind of drives me crazy about this is because you know our history in this country. You know that people historically really have had times, unless they were owning us. When they were owning us, then they wanted us to reproduce. But then now it seems like a lot of things are coming out and not a lot of things being done to help us reproduce because we want to reproduce. And so when you have a very low hemoglobin and hematocrit, and you have sickle cell, you have multiple infarcts, you have multi-system organ issues, it makes it so horrible. That's why young women that are out there listening right now, if you're out there and you are wanting to have a baby, you have to start trying to prepare for that your whole life. And that's not fair. But that's what you kind of got to start doing.
That's not fair. No, that's not fair, Doc. You're absolutely right. You got to, because, one thing about it is, T, you had the bone marrow transplant, correct? What is that process like? Because having sickle cell is already tough. Right. That's tough enough.
Yeah.
But to prepare for a bone marrow transplant, how does that procedure even go?
Yeah, so it started with me in the hospital. I knew I would be there for at least 30 days. I did chemotherapy, like 2-3 different types of chemotherapy, total body radiation. And, the process has changed because it's been like 11 years since mine. I don't think they do the radiation anymore. But
no, not as much.
So I had the radiation, I had the chemo, and then the actual bone marrow transplant is like the simplest part because it's really just like getting a bone. It's like getting a blood transfusion, and my mother was my donor, so this was a half match donor. The thing about my story that you don't hear a lot of people talking about is that I rejected the transplant. Yeah. So that process was just so incredibly taxing, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually, and not just on me, but my family as well. I rejected, and my bone marrow shut down for 4 months. So, I wasn't making any red cells, white cells. It was a really scary time. I'm just thankful, God brought me through to the other side. And had I not been through that, there would be no SCRED.
Well, that's a really good point. I want people, when you see on the news, I'm a news guy, right? So when you see on the news, there's therapy or cures for sickle cell, all this other kind of stuff, and they talk about bone marrow, and there's so many organizations out there that want Black people to donate for bone marrow, to be bone marrow transplant donors, and they work very well. I love them. The issue is that, though, you need to understand when you're about to go to this bone marrow transplant that it's not going to just be, all just skipping through the park. I mean, like you said, what the process is, you have to basically kill all of your cells that are in your body that could possibly make sickle cells. So that's your red cell line. And all the cells that can go and attack those cells, you got to kill them all and then put new ones in and hope that those new ones are going to make cells that are not sickled and don't start killing the other ones. And what happened to her is that hers started killing the other ones, and that makes it really hard. And also, even if you don't, you still going to have to be on medicine for immunosuppressants for the rest of your life, even if your bone marrow transplant goes well. So I want people out there to understand it's not just a walk in the park. Even though you don't have sickle cell issues much anymore, you might have others.
Right. And that's if you're successful. And don't get me wrong, like I am very hopeful about the promise of stem cell and gene therapy. But I do think that as a community, we really need to have more honest conversations about risk benefits. A huge part of my advocacy career, so to speak, was because I would go to these conferences and there would be these panels on curative therapies, but everybody was a success. And I was like, it doesn't always go like that. And we need to talk about that and have a real conversation about risk benefits so that people can make informed decisions.
You know, one thing about it is, and Teonna, is that they keep talking about like bone marrow transplants is a cure for
Yeah,
sickle cell.
yeah.
Speak to that. Would we consider this being a cure?
Well, it's interesting. And I am having like a conference in 2024 where one day is solely dedicated towards gene and cell therapy, because I think people really need to understand and we need to actually define what a cure is to us, right? Because sickle cell is cumulative. So, say you already have a vascular necrosis, a bone marrow transplant is not going to fix that.
Yeah,
And so we really have to talk about what a cure means to
yeah,
us.
Yeah,
right.
scientists are very interesting because as we move with in these circles, we talk about cure because our science that cycle of science is complete. Meaning, okay, you have sickle
Right.
cell, I give you bone marrow transplant, now you don't have sickle cells. Ooh, cure. But that's what scientists kind of talk about when we start trying to get grants and things like that for our cure. But that doesn't take into consideration the ups and downs, and like Black folks say, the trials and tribulations and all the
Right.
business of sickle cell. It just doesn't, or any other disease for that matter. Cures are very, very
Absolutely.
difficult. Like Chris Rock said one time, he was like, doctors don't cure nothing. All they do is give you a ability to live.
You sound just like him.
Right,
Right.
right. And let me ask you this. Just talk to me more about SCRED, about the reproduction, about how we do
Mm.
this. I mean, what does it actually mean? Your foundation. What is the mission for SCRED?
So really just to make sure that individuals have access to high quality care. And we do that through awareness and education. So a lot of the times when you're talking about sickle cell, it's really seen as a disease of pain. So reproductive health has taken a back burner, but things like delayed puberty, like think about a fifth grader who's in a locker room and everybody else is developed, but she's not. That's sickle cell. And people don't realize how isolating that can be. And so, even providers, right? They're always talking to me about how they have to talk about the pain and they have to talk about the fatigue and they have to talk about the organs. And they don't really
Right.
think like the ovaries, that's an organ.
Yeah.
That's how I want them to think.
Exactly.
And so, what we really have started doing is really like educating and empowering on both sides, the providers and the patients, to realize that this should be prioritized. So we're doing things like developing reproductive life plans. We have a course on preconception and pregnancy. We're also trying to change policies, right? Like I'm a
Right.
nonprofit, so I can give away money so that people can freeze their eggs, bank their sperm. But ultimately, that's putting a band-aid on it. I need to be working on legislation so that our insurance will cover this.
Yes.
So we do that. We do advocacy. We're working on some research. There's so many data gaps, so many things that we don't yet know about reproductive health, sexual health, maternal health, and sickle cell disease. So we got a lot going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
And we talk about just females, but there are issues with the males as well.
There are issues with the males. Priapism, that's a big thing, and
Yeah.
that's I don't know if you want me to explain what that is
No,
or
no,
Well,
anyone else.
no. Let me tell you something, Doc. I know exactly what it is. I've had two of them.
It's a. I mean, I've had to deal with that, with patients, and that is one. And so, just for the record, we must define it. Priapism is
Yeah.
when your is so engorged with blood because the sickle cells go into it and can't take, and the blood can't drain out. So you have a very painful enlarged for hours and hours, and it's very painful. And if you can't get the blood out, then your will basically necrose. So what we have to do is stick it, and everybody just hold your horses because this hurts. You got to stick a needle in the and drain the blood out, and that is something that is it's embarrassing for the patient, and it's also very painful for the patient. And all these things over time can decrease your ability to have erection that's appropriate, and you can have erectile dysfunction. Which, as a black man, I can get a witness on this. If you got erectile dysfunction, you're gonna have a problem. So that's also a sexual issue and a reproductive issue. So that's important.
Right. Exactly. And I think that for so long in the community, we've really focused on survival. Like I was told, like, look, you're probably already infertile anyway. Just be happy to be here, get this transplant. Let's keep you here.
Sure.
But I think that I'm excited about the time that we're in now because it shifted from just survival. Like survival is not enough. I want an optimal quality of life. And like, who doesn't want to have a good sex life? Right. Yeah. Even like we hear a lot about people having sex and then having a crisis later. Like these are all things that impact your mental health.
Yeah, I want to throw out there too, and I've talked to sickle cell couples about this. You know, a lot of when you have sex, you can have the crisis because just like if you're working out too much and then you don't take your medicine or you know are not drinking enough water or whatever, sex is a workout. It's supposed to be a workout, right? And so that can precipitate a crisis as well. So once again, that decreases your time that you're going to have sex. That decreases the amount of a possibility to be able to procreate. You know what I mean? Because you're in so much pain, you can't do that. And let me tell you something, Johnny. What you're doing right now is so important because I treat patients with sickle cell, and I have to be honest. I think about this, but I don't think about it as much as I should when I'm talking about a sickle cell patient. And that is something I take that burden on because, and I know I'm a Black man. So imagine what people that don't look like us are thinking about. You see what I'm saying? So I appreciate what you're doing. I really do.
Yeah, you're doing a great job, T. I'm not lying to you. I'm gonna tell you something, man. When I think about my sexual health with sickle cell, for me, as specifically for me, I've had 2 of those prior prisms. I've had them. Dr. Hebert, that is a real thing for me. See, it's hard enough to go in there with a sickle cell crisis, but actually going in there with a prior prism, and it's demeaning sometimes. But to actually have everything that Dr. Hebert said, to have a needle, and that actually happened. And it was so bad for me, I had to, after they finished that process, I had to have a blood transfusion. See, this sickle cell thing has stacks on top of stacks on top of stacks and issues on top of issues. And our reproduction health, first of all, we have to even worry about how we mate. See, that's things that everybody else don't have to worry about for us. And it's sad that we have to have that, but that's exactly what happens. I actually have to ask you, I'm in love with you. Excuse me, do you have a trait? Does anybody else have to do that? No. And so what you're doing, Miss Teonna, is very important to talk about the reproduction health with people like us with sickle cell. That is very important because I've been there. Man, it is embarrassing to go to the restaurant, go to the hospital and have this issue and a doctor looking at you. It's demeaning as a man.
Let me say this, Kier, and this even puts it even further out there. You are going to a hospital, to an ER you don't know. You're going there with asking, as a big Black man, you're going there asking for pain medicine. You asking for morphine. You got a hard penis, and you like, help me. And these white people look at you like you're crazy. They like, we don't want to have nothing to do with it because they don't really get it. And I'm telling you, that's a problem, bro. That's like you said, stacks on stacks on stacks.
Stacks on stacks on stacks. Ms. Teonna, tell us where everybody can find you and what your organization is doing. What do you want to see your future at, and talk about your organization before we get out of here?
For real, if they could go to our website and press that donate button, that would be
amazing. Right.
Because we need
tax rules, everything around me.
Funding. We need funding.
Dollar,
I gotta be able to pay people. But that's my idea. Like, you know, I want to go into these comprehensive clinics and make sure that they've implemented reproductive health care into standard of care. Because like it was just said, a lot of these providers, it's not prioritized. So that's my hope, is that I can really begin to change policies and have a real impact on clinical care.
You know what? You're living your life, young lady. Thank you so much for being on the Living Your Life podcast. She's doing it, Dr. Hebert.
For sure.
Teonna Woolford, everybody. Teonna Woolford, give a round of applause.